acted, and are not to this day. Mugen has always wanted more, even when it was a tributary. The Federation is an ambitious, rapidly growing country with a bulging population on a tiny island. Imagine you're a highly militaristic country with more people than your land can sustain, and nowhere to expand. Imagine that your rulers have propagated an ideology that they are gods, and that you have a divine right to extend your empire across the Eastern Hemisphere. Suddenly, the sprawling landmass right across the Nadine Sea looks like a prime target, doesn't it? He turned back to the map. The First Pompey War was a disaster. The fractured empire could never stand up against well-trained Federation troops who had been drilling for decades for this enterprise. So here's a puzzle for you. How did we win the Second Poppy War? A boy named Han raised his hand. The trifecta? Muted snickers sounded around the classroom. The trifecta, the Vipress, the Dragon Emperor, and the Gatekeeper, were 3 heroic soldiers who had unified the Empire against the Federation. They were real. The woman known as the Vipress still sat on the throne at Synagard, but their legendary martial arts abilities were the subject of children's tales. Rin had grown up hearing stories about how the trifecta had single-handedly flattened entire Federation battalions, leveraging storms and floods with their supernatural powers. But even she thought it sounded ridiculous in a lecture about history. Don't laugh. The trifecta were important. Without their political machinations, we might never have rallied the 12 provinces, said Yim. But that's not the answer I'm looking for. Rin raised her hand. She had memorized this answer from Tutor Feyric's history primers. We raised the Heartland, pursued a strategy of slash and burn. When the Federation army marched too far inland, their supply lines ran out and they couldn't feed their armies. Yim acknowledged this answer with a shrug. Good answer, but false. That's just propaganda they put in the countryside textbooks. The slash and burn strategy hurt the rural countryside more than it hurt Mugen. Anyone else? It was the wiry-haired boy in the front who got it right. We won because we lost Spear. Yim nodded. Stand up. Explain. The boy shoved his hair back and stood. We won the war because losing Spear made Hesperia intervene. And, Hesperia's naval abilities were vastly superior to Mugen's. They won the war over the ocean theater, and Nikon got looped into the subsequent peace treaty. The victory wasn't really ours at all. Correct, Yim said. The boy sat, looking immensely relieved. Nikon did not win the Second Poppy War, Yim reiterated. The Federation is gone because we were so pathetic that the great naval powers to the west felt bad for us. We did such a terrible job defending our country that it took genocide for Hesperia to intervene. While Nikata forces were tied up on the northern front, a fleet of Federation ships razed the dead island overnight. Every man, woman, and child on Spear was butchered, and their bodies burned. An entire race, gone in a day. Their class was silent. They had grown up hearing stories about the destruction of Spear, a tiny island that punctuated the ocean between the Nadine Sea and Omanad Bay like a teardrop, lying just beside Snake Province. It had been the Empire's only remaining tributary state, conquered and annexed at the height of the Red Emperor's reign. It held a fraught place in Nikon's history, a glaring example of the massive failure of the disunited army under the warlord's regime. Rin had always wondered whether the loss of Spear was purely an accident. If any other province had been destroyed the way Spear had, the Nikata Empire wouldn't have stopped with a peace treaty. They would have fought until the Federation of Mugen was in pieces. But the Spearleys weren't really Nikata at all. Tall and brown-skinned, they were an island people who had always been ethnically separate from the Nikata mainlanders. They spoke their own language, wrote in their own script, and practiced their own religion. They had joined the Imperial militia only at the Red Emperor's sword point. This all pointed to strained relations between the Nikata and the Spearleys all the way up through the Second Poppy War. So, Rin thought, if any Nikata territory had to be sacrificed, Spear was the obvious choice. We have survived the last century through nothing more than sheer luck and the charity of the West," said Yim. "But even with Hesperia's help, Nikon only barely managed to drive out the Federation invaders. Under pressure from Hesperia, the Federation signed the Non-Aggression Pact at the end of the Second Poppy War, and Nikon has retained its independence since. The Federation has been relegated to trading outposts on the edge of the Horse Province, and for the past nearly 2 decades, they've more or less behaved. But the Muganese grow restless, and Hesperia has never been good about keeping its promises. The heroes of the Trifecta have been reduced to 1. The Emperor is dead,